So for those who do have the church Bibles, you can find Mark chapter 13 on page 872. Those who have your own Bibles, I'm sure the table of contents will suffice. All right, Mark 13, and I'm definitely reading 13 this time. As Jesus was leaving the temple, one of his disciples said to him, "Look, teacher, what massive stones, what magnificent buildings." "Do you see all these great buildings?" replied Jesus. "Not one stone here will be left on another. Everyone will be thrown down." As Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives, opposite the temple, Peter, James, John, and Andrew asked him privately, "Tell us when all these will happen. What will be the sign that they are all about to be fulfilled?" Jesus said to them, "Watch out that no one deceives you. Many will come in my name, claiming, 'I am he,' and will deceive many. When you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places and famines. These are the beginning of the birth pains. You must be on your guard. You will be handed over to the local councils and flogged in the synagogues. On account of me, you will stand before governors and kings as witnesses to them. And the gospel must first be preached to all nations. Whenever you are arrested and brought to trial, do not worry beforehand about what to say. Just say whatever is given you at that time. For it is not you speaking, but the Holy Spirit. Brother will betray brother to death, and a father his child. Children will rebel against their parents and have them put to death. Everyone will hate you because of me, but the one who stands firm to the end will be saved. When you see the abomination that causes desolation, standing where it does not belong, let the reader understand then that those who are in Judea even, to the mountains. Let no one on the housetop go down or enter the house to take anything out. Let no one in the field go back to get their cloak. How dreadful it will be in those days for pregnant women and nursing mothers. Pray that this will not take place in winter, because those will be the days of distress unequaled from the beginning, when God created the world, until now, and never to be equaled again. If the Lord had not cut short those days, no one would survive. But for the sake of the elect, whom he has chosen, he has shortened them. At that time, if anyone says to you, 'Look, here is the Messiah,' or 'Look, there he is,' do not believe it. For false messiahs and prophets will appear and perform signs. For false messiahs and false prophets will appear and perform signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. So be on your guard. I have told you everything ahead of time. But in those days, following that distress, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from the sky, and the heavenly bodies will be shaken. At that time, people will see the Son of Man coming in clouds with great power and glory, and he will send his angels and gather his elect from the four winds, from the ends of the earth to the ends of the heavens. Now learn this lesson from the fig tree. As soon as its twigs get tender and its leaves come out, you know that summer is near. Even so, when you see these things happening to you, know that it is near, right at the door. Truly I tell you, this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have happened. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. But about that day or hour no one knows, not even the angels in heaven nor the Son, but only the Father. Be on guard, be alert. You do not know when the time will come. It's like a man going away. he leaves his house and puts his servants in charge, each with their assigned task, and tells the one at the door to keep watch. Therefore, keep watch, because you do not know when the owner of the house will come back, whether in the evening or at midnight, or when the rooster crows or at dawn. If he comes suddenly, do not let him find you sleeping. What I say to you, I say to everyone, watch.
Well, good morning, brothers and sisters. We're doing it again. Another round. Hello. Yes. All right. Good. This is user error, let me assure you. Hey, it's good to see you. It's good to be with you, brothers and sisters. I'm glad to be together this morning. Good to be here. If you're a guest, if you're visiting with us this morning, we're really glad you're here as well. Welcome. Thanks for being with us. My name's Peter. I'm one of the pastors here. We love having guests with us. We love having people join us. Our community is an open one that is always embracing and welcoming people in. We're glad you're here with us. What we're going to do right now is we're going to spend some time together reflecting on that passage, reflecting on what it might mean, reflecting on what it might mean for us. I'm going to lead us as we do that. And it's a bit of a task, right? Because there's a lot of strange stuff going on in the chapter of the Bible that we just read. I imagine that as that was read, lots of us had a lot of questions, right? A lot of questions. Maybe the biggest question is, what am I supposed to do with all of this stuff, right? What do I make of this? I actually want to begin us, right, with just answering that question straight up in a straightforward sort of a way. Because I think that's actually pretty easy to do. I think it's easy to know what you are supposed to do with this passage, right? In this part of the Bible, there's heaps of questions that are pretty tricky at the level of detail, right? Lots of details, quite tricky. But the big picture, the big question, what do I do with this stuff? That, I think, is pretty clear, right? Because Jesus just tells us straight up, again and again. You got your Bible there? Just scan over the passage quickly with me. Verse 5, watch out. Verse 9, be on your guard. Verse 23, be on your guard. Verse 33, be on guard, be alert. Verse 35, keep watch. Verse 37, watch. Did you get it? Jesus wants his followers to be alert. Keep watch, be on your guard, be alert. It's actually quite a simple picture where the rubber hits the road in all of this stuff that Jesus is saying. Be alert. Jesus wants us to be alert, or perhaps you could say more specifically, Jesus wants his followers to be the right kind of alert. Right? Jesus wants his followers to be alert. He wants them to be the right kind of alert. Because there are different ways to be alert. In my house, we got a cat, right? She's basically still a kitten, and she is permanently on high alert, let me tell you. We're not sure what she's on alert for. I don't think she knows, but whatever it is, she's ready. Okay? Sometimes you're just walking past her, she's doing nothing, and kind of. Sometimes, there's no stimulus at all. She just gets up and tears out of the room at full speed. Who knows? I don't know what she's alert for, but she's alert. She's all keyed up. She's jittery. She's jumpy. That's not the only way to be alert. I don't know if you've read about this at all. Apparently, people have worked out you can tell when there's going to be a big international military event involving the US. You can tell this is going to happen because the pizza shops near the Pentagon will suddenly go to like 100% volume in their orders, right? All the military command types working overtime throughout the night. They call it the Pentagon Pizza Index. You can be alert by knowing the specific signal to be watching out for. You can be alert that way. Your firefighters, though, dream career for me, let me tell you. Your firefighters, they have to be alert in a different sort of a way. There's no advanced signal, right, that they can watch out for. They just get the call and it's go time. So alertness for the firefighters down at the fire station, right, alertness for them means just being good to go at any given moment. That means kind of maintaining just a constant state of readiness, just being good to go when you need to go, whenever that is. There's different ways to be alert, right? Jesus wants to make sure that his disciples are alert, but they're alert in the right kind of way. And that's the big picture, right? I think that's going to help us to kind of keep our bearings as we steer through what is a bit of a tricky passage. I'm going to work through it, going to try to explain as I can. I can guarantee you right now, I'm not going to answer every single question that could be asked here. If we get to the end and you're like, I really wish you would have talked about this or that, that's cool. Let me know on the Connect card. I'll do my best to answer your question there, okay? Cool. All right, so you've got a little outline of where we're going inside the handout that you got on the way in. We're at point 1, and we're going to start at verse 1. So, verse 1, Mark chapter 13. As Jesus was leaving the temple, one of his disciples said to him, "Look, teacher, what massive stones, what magnificent buildings." The temple in Jerusalem, right, is what they're looking at. It was massively expanded in the time of King Herod. It's the kind of building you just can't fail to be impressed by. I don't know if you've been to a building or the most impressive building you've ever seen is. This is the most impressive building that anybody looking at it right now has ever seen. They say that it shines like a snow-capped mountain. It's massive. It's magnificent in its finishes. If you go to Jerusalem today, you can still see what they call the Western Stone. It's this gargantuan limestone building block. It's 14 meters long. It weighs, no one knows how much it weighs, hundreds of tons, right? Everything about the temple speaks of splendor and stability. It's got a mass to it. But not to Jesus. Not to Jesus, right? Jesus looks at it. Verse 2, you see all these great buildings? Not one stone here will be left on another. Every one will be thrown down. During his time in the capital, Jesus, right, he's been dropping lots of dark hints about the powers that be in Jerusalem, about how they're not headed in a good direction. Now he just comes out and says it, right? Guys, this city is living on borrowed time. This temple is done for. Everything you see right now, as we look across the valley, everything you see, that's going to be rubble. And today, if you do go and visit Jerusalem, that's what you're going to find. Rubble. You won't find the temple Jesus looked at, because in the year 70 AD, the Roman army marched on Jerusalem, attacked it, and destroyed the temple. If you go to the city today, you won't find a magnificent temple shining in the sun. You'll see the stones that used to make it jumbled up, lying in the street. You see a fragment of one wall standing as a reminder of what was lost. But as Jesus speaks, right, all of this destruction still lies in the future, right? In this moment, as his disciples sit there on the Mount of Olives, looking across at the massive temple complex, it looks immaculate. It looks perfect. It looks permanent. It looks like it's going to stand there forever. And so his disciples press him for some more information. They just try to get their heads around what Jesus is saying. Tell us, they say, verse 4, tell us, when will these things happen? And what will be the sign that they are all about to be fulfilled? You know, Jesus, you say that there's this kind of cataclysm on the way. What's that going to be like? What are we supposed to look out for? How will we know when it's about to happen? What's the signal? And in the verses that follow, Jesus answers their question. He does answer their question, but in his typical Jesus way, he doesn't just answer it straight up, right? Because here's the thing, the disciples, Jesus doesn't want to just respond to their agenda, right? To kind of start from where they're coming from and go from there. No, he doesn't want to adopt their agenda. He wants to reshape their agenda. Okay? He wants to reshape the whole way they think about the future and about the present in accordance with his agenda. And so in the next bit, Jesus does tell them about what they've asked about the crisis and the cataclysm that's coming pretty soon on the city. But he also sketches out for them kind of what the chapter leading up to that moment is going to be like. Because he wants them to be alert, right? He wants them to be on their guard, not just at kind of one key moment at the end of the chapter, but the whole way through it. Here's why, okay? Because the next chapter, Jesus says, is going to feel like quite a doomy sort of a time. Right? Get ready for the vibes to turn pretty apocalyptic, is what Jesus has to say. Jesus says, guys, in the next chapter, you're going to hear about wars starting. You're going to hear about rumors of more wars that might start. There's going to be international turmoil, going to be natural disasters here, there, and everywhere. All right? It's going to feel like things are going off the rails. That stuff is going to happen, and I'm warning you about it now. When you hear about it, don't panic. All right? Verse 7, he says, don't be alarmed when you hear about this stuff. All right? Don't be keyed up, jumpy. Don't be kitten alert. That's not going to serve you well in this next chapter. You're going to need to keep your head. Because when it feels like the world is ending, right, when the vibes turn all apocalyptic, what you always get in those moments is you get apocalyptic preachers, you get apocalyptic pretenders. You get people popping up saying, hey, guess what? I'm the Messiah. Do what I tell you. You really need to not fall for that, Jesus says to his friends. Keep your eyes peeled for that stuff. Don't get sucked in by that. No matter how impressive these guys seem, signs, wonders, whatever. No, don't get sucked in by these types. Don't get fooled. Verse 5, you got to watch out that no one deceives you. All right? There's a lot of charlatans going around. Don't get tricked by them. All this stuff's going to happen, but when you hear about it, don't be alarmed. It's not the end of the world. Not even the end of the chapter, Jesus says. Now, there is a moment, okay, that you are going to need to watch for. Don't be keyed up to all this stuff, but there is one thing that you've got to watch for. There is a moment that will signal the crisis Jesus has predicted, the cataclysm, the end for Jerusalem, for the temple. Jesus talks about that signal from verse 14. He says, when you see it, you've got to flee. You've got to run. If you're in the region of Judea, run. Don't waste any time. Don't seek refuge in the city. Go bush instead. Go up to the mountains. If it's winter, if you've got little kids with you, you're going to have let me tell you, you're going to have a terrible time as a refugee. But trust me, it's going to be worse than better than getting trapped in Jerusalem, right? Anything will be better than that, is Jesus' message. So when you see the signal, you've got to run. What exactly is the signal? It's in verse 14, like I said. When you see, he says, the abomination that causes desolation, standing where it doesn't belong, now let the reader understand, then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. All right, so the signal is something Jesus calls the abomination that causes desolation. We're not going to go too deep on this. Briefly, right, what's happening here? Jesus has kind of lifted a phrase from the Old Testament book of Daniel. All right, that's a phrase that's in the Old Testament book of Daniel. Jesus kind of picked this up and he's turned it into a coded signal. And the book of Daniel talks about this crisis, right? The crisis of a foreign army come to wipe out the city and its temple, about the destruction of the entire sacred system, culminating in a devastating act of sacrilege. So by referencing that kind of moment in the book of Daniel, what Jesus is saying, all right, when you see that, when you see the kind of thing Daniel was talking about, when you see something like that starting to play out in front of your eyes, when you feel like you're living through the book of Daniel, that signals the crisis that ends in the cataclysm. That's the end for the city and its temple. Okay, so from our kind of vantage point in history, right, where we sit in history, looking backwards, we can tell, we know that cataclysm took place in the year AD 70, right, when the Romans fronted up and caused terrible destruction and suffering in the city. So Jesus' words from verse 5 to verse 23, right, this section we're looking at right now, they take us from his time up to that time, from roughly AD 30 to AD 70. He's talking about a single chapter in human history, the time of a single generation, 30 to 70. In this part of the Bible, Jesus is actually not describing our generation. He is talking to his generation, warning them. But his warning to them is important for us to hear as well. Okay? We shouldn't get confused that he's speaking direct to us. No, he's speaking to them. But we need to listen in and learn from what he says to them as well. Okay? we need to watch out for deceivers. We need to watch out for deceivers. We also live in a moment that feels quite doomy, yeah? Wars, rumours of wars, disasters here, there, and everywhere. It doesn't sound necessarily like it's just the first century. That sounds like it could basically be describing my newsfeed, right? Right now, the vibes are kind of apocalyptic, I would say. And like Jesus says, when there are apocalyptic vibes, there are always people who want to trade on that, okay? There are always people who are ready to say, hey, oh, everything's going to hell, but guess what? I'm the answer. People ready to hype up the crisis and offer themselves as the figure who can see you through it. We've got to watch out for that stuff. Because end-time fever always ends badly, right? If you look at doomsday prophets, if you look at self-designated messiahs, if you look at the circles they set up, and if you look at the way it plays out for those people, from the Middle Ages through to today, you'll see a consistent pattern of abuse, exploitation, and violence. That's how that stuff goes. These guys are bad news, and we, friends, today, here, now, in our moment, we should not get mixed up with them. There's only one Messiah, right? It's not any of these snake oil salesmen. Listen to Jesus. Don't let him lead you astray. Be careful about what you hear on YouTube. Watch out that no one deceives you, Jesus says. He also says, watch yourselves, right? Watch out for deceivers and watch yourselves. Be on your guard. Jesus is saying his disciples need to be careful not to get drawn into end-time fever. The kind of flip side of that, equally important, they can't be drawn into end-time fever because they can't be drawn away from their actual task, right? There's something they're supposed to be doing. If they get distracted with this doomy, apocalyptic end-time stuff, they're going to be in trouble, right? They can't get drawn away from their actual task, the task that he spells out in verse 10. Verse 10. The gospel must first be preached to all nations. That's what comes first. Announcing the good news of Jesus in all the world. That's the task. It's not going to be easy, Jesus says, but don't get discouraged and don't get distracted. Endure to the end. The Lord will help you on the way. And in the end, the Lord will save you. And friends, we have that same task. Now we today, here in our generation, we have that same task. Preaching the gospel, the good news about Jesus, about his saving death and life-giving resurrection, the gospel of the good news, preaching that good news to every generation. We have that task too. Telling the good news about Jesus wherever we can, whenever we can, however we can, whomever we can. For us, in our moment, our discouragements are probably not the same as these first Christians. We don't face intense persecution, do we? In the same way that that generation did. You're unlikely to find yourself hauled up into court over this stuff. Our discouragements are probably not the same. Our distractions are probably not the same. I think, truthfully, we must avoid being drawn into end-time fever. Truthfully, though, I think we're less likely to be drawn into end-time fever, more likely to be drawn into consumer complacency, just kind of snoozing it up and buying things online. Now, we face different discouragements to them, different distractions to them, but we have the same task as them, friends. We're doing the same thing. We're about the same business. Speaking the good news about Jesus, with God's help, all the way right up to the end. All right, so, in our passage, as we're making our way through it here, right, we've got to the end of verse 23, and by the end of verse 23, Jesus is actually done answering their question. He's answered the question that they've asked him about the destruction of the temple and when it's going to happen. Verse 23, he says, look, I've told you everything, and ahead of time. That's it. That's the end of the answer. He's covered their agenda, but there is still more to say, okay? Because remember, Jesus is not just responding to their agenda. he's helping them to get with his agenda. So far in this chapter, Jesus has spoken about a bunch of stuff that is not the end. No matter how end-timey it feels, the end is yet to come, he says. He has spoken about an end at the end of the temple in Jerusalem. But now he wants to speak about the end. The end, like capital T, capital E, the end. And to do that, to talk about this kind of new topic that he's shifted his way over to, the end, he lifts another image from the book of Daniel. You didn't know you were going to be reading so much Daniel today in this sermon on Mark, but that's how it is. He lifts this book of image from Daniel. Daniel, the Old Testament prophetic book, right? It has this kind of vision of a series of kingdoms, empires rising, causing destruction, and then being destroyed themselves. They're represented by these vicious, ravenous animals, beasts. One beast destroys another, until at last the cycle comes to an end in the book, not with a beast, not with a final beast, but with a human figure. That's what puts an end to the cycle of kingdom preying upon kingdom. Kingdoms rise and kingdoms fall until finally, at the end, a human, a son of man, receives a kingdom that never ends. He becomes God's ruler over God's kingdom, the kingdom that lasts forever. Jesus says that thing that Daniel talks about, that's what happens at the end. Verse 26. At that time, people will see the Son of Man coming in clouds with great power and glory. And he will send his angels and gather his elect from the four winds, from the ends of the earth to the ends of the heavens. Jesus is saying, okay, after the kind of the crisis, the cataclysm of AD 70, after that comes the true crisis, the true cataclysm, the moment for the true Messiah at last to appear and to take his crown. The day of judgment for the powers that be, the day of salvation for all the Messiah's chosen ones, the day when he gathers them all together, the day when he gathers them all to himself. Jesus says the next chapter ends with the destruction of the temple, but that's not the end of the story. Literally, Jesus says, that is not the end of the world. The story really ends with the Son of Man coming in glory, crowned forever, bringing salvation. That's the end, like capital T, capital E, the end, when the Son of Man receives the eternal kingdom. Now, Son of Man, that phrase, it just means human being. The guy. Jesus says, people will see the guy coming in the clouds. Now, who is this guy? If we've read Mark up to this point, we know exactly who Jesus thinks the guy is. Jesus thinks that he himself is the guy. The guy who will bring history to its conclusion, the guy who will literally be globally worshipped when God makes him the king of the universe for all time. Jesus thinks that he is that guy. Incidentally, this is why Jesus doesn't make a very good guru. If we think of Jesus as a sort of a spiritual Brené Brown or Simon Sinek or something like that, we just won't have understood him really at all. Jesus is not just a profound thinker with a lot of insights to offer in the spirituality space. He's not that, right? Because Jesus says, I'm that guy. I'm the end, capital T, capital E. Now, if Jesus actually believes that, he's not a guru that you should kind of listen to sometimes. He's totally deranged. Unless, of course, he's right. But if he's right, if there is something more to Jesus than the kind of apocalyptic rantings of one more wild-eyed wannabe Messiah, if he's not just a naughty boy, if he's the guy, if he's the end, well, then he's what it's all about, right? Like he's what we're waiting for. So, the obvious question is, when? When? When is this cosmic coronation going to happen? You know, when Jesus, the Son of Man, the guy, brings the end, the moment that we would call the second coming. Right? When's that going to happen? When should we expect that? Well, now we're asking the right question. Yeah? We started with the disciples asking the question about the destruction of the temple, when that would happen. Jesus has shifted their agenda. He has shifted our agenda. He shifted our attention from the temple to himself, to his coming as eternal king. That's where we end up here. When is that going to happen? Well, that's what he picks up in the final section of this chapter. When? When? The answer that he gives to the when question has two parts. Part one, when is it going to happen? It's going to happen after the destruction of the temple. He says that the crisis that spells the end for Jerusalem, the end for its temple, that's going to play out within a single lifetime. Right? This generation will not pass away until all these things have happened, he says. When you see these things happening, you know that it's near, right at the door. It's a bit like, you know, when you hear Mariah Carey in the supermarket, you know Christmas is near. When you see leaves on the fig tree, Jesus says, you know summer is near. When you see the temple in ruins, you will know that the Son of Man is near. That's part one of the answer. This will happen after the temple falls. Part two, complicating things significantly, part two is no one knows. After the temple, no one knows. Verse 32, but about that day or hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. You can't mark your calendar for Jesus' return. You can't construct a timeline and calculate the date. If you're on a YouTube video that's doing that, you know you can just hit, close on that one straight up. You can't calculate it, the initiative, the decision, the timing. It rests with the Father alone, is what Jesus says. So here's what the two parts of this answer add up to. We know we're in the final chapter, but we don't know when we're going to hit the final page. All right, we know that we're in the final chapter, but we don't know when we'll turn over and it will be the last page. So when will the end come? When will Jesus come? The only answer that anyone can give is worth anything at all is any moment now. Any moment now. But, any moment now, and the kind of any moment now that can last for 2,000 years, what do you do? What do you do with that? What does that mean? Once more, Jesus, thank you, Jesus, just spells it out for us. But what do you do with an answer like that, any moment now? Well, you've got to keep watch. If that's when he's coming, if he's coming any moment now, keep watch. Verse 33. Be on guard, be alert, because you don't know when that time will come. It's like a man going away. He leaves his house, puts his servants in charge, each with their assigned task, tells the one at the door, keep watch. Therefore, keep watch, because you don't know when the owner of the house will come back, whether in the evening or at midnight or when the rooster crows or at dawn. If he comes suddenly, don't let him find you sleeping. What I say to you, I say to everyone, watch. There's only one way to be ready for an imminent, unscheduled event, and that is to always be ready. To just always be on the lookout, to keep watch, to be alert firefighter style, in a state of constant, prepared readiness. So keep watch, Jesus says. Keep at it. In the little story Jesus tells, the master goes off. He gives his servants jobs to do while he's away. Each one has their assigned task. You don't want to come back and find them sleeping on the job. Now, friends, we know the job that our master has assigned to us. The gospel must be preached to all nations. Now imagine the Lord returning to find that we'd lost heart, just lost interest. Returning to find us sleeping at the wheel. We have our assigned task, our tiny moment in our tiny corner of the world where we can play our tiny, crucial part in the worldwide spread of the gospel. All right, we know the task. Speaking gospel words wherever we can, living holy lives, lives of generous love, lives that reflect and adorn the gospel. That's the task. So let's keep at it. Keep watch. Any moment now, we'll see our Saviour coming.